days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, Constant Reader Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by the angel of the morning himself. It's Mr. Matt Friedman. How's it going today, Matt?
I'm barfing directly into your face.
And it's cathartic in some way.
It's it's a moment of real character growth for me.
Yep. This week on the show, we have finally reached the end of it, Matt. This is part 19 of our 19-part coverage of Stephen King's It. At last, we're here at the end. It's the final moment, the final episode, the final adaptation. At last, we get to It, Chapter 2. We're here. Matt, I'm pissed off at you. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
I want you and I want everyone else to know that I'm pissed off at you. And here's the thing. Recording this podcast is sometimes a pretty stressful experience. Sometimes, like you've got like 100 pages to talk about and distill and be smart and entertaining, and bring perhaps new angles to stuff that people have read 100 times before. And all that pressure is kind of in the back of your head while you're talking into a microphone. But sometimes there's things like today's episode, which I was really like looking forward to just kind of leaning back in my seat, hanging out, and just ragging on a movie for an hour with my friend.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, you come to me with a message that just says, "I'm sorry, Scott, I really liked this movie."
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have a fight.
Yeah. You punched the wall, punched a hole through the wall. And it was I was just as shocked as you, man, So
we're going to have to do this now. I can't lean back in my chair. I can't relax. I have to be the person defending the haters. Which is not a position I like being in.
That's a really interesting way of phrasing that. I'll just say, okay, sure.
That's what we're gonna have to do. So I can't wait for you to tell me, and more importantly, the thousands of people listening, why you like this movie.
Yeah. So I guess so I'm the aggressor taking the aggressive stance that the movie is all right and pretty fun. Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into all that. Before we do, though, we just want to say once again. This is it. This is the week, right? Tickets are on sale probably if you're listening to this. We, by the way, are recording this on Monday night, so our tickets have not even gone on sale for our patrons. We might possibly, depending on how those ticket sales go, be splicing in right this minute with a message from future Matt and Scott about how those Patreon ticket sales went and what effect that will have on you folks if you are anxiously awaiting to get the open ticket sales when they go on sale this Thursday at noon. But this is it. This, if you're listening, it might be too late.
Yeah, not necessarily. Insert beep here.
Wow.
Yeah,
Matt, we're future us.
Yeah, that was weird. That felt weird. It felt like several days passed.
Almost as if. Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to pop in. Like we said, we had recorded the entire show on Monday before tickets went on sale. Tickets went on sale yesterday, Tuesday, and we thought we should pop in and talk about it briefly here for a second because a crazy thing happened, Matt.
What's that?
We opened those tickets to patrons on Tuesday, and they bought all of them.
All the tickets?
Okay, well, not all of the tickets, no, but okay. Our 4 tour packages, we had 2 tours on Saturday, 2 tours on Sunday. All of those tickets were purchased within the first hour, which is crazy. It's a crazy thing to happen.
Yeah, that's. I don't think that's what we expected to happen, but I guess it's what we kind of hoped would happen. Except now we're in the situation where a lot of people didn't get tickets, but. I mean, that's I guess that's just how the world works. Finite numbers of tickets sometimes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird day. It was very exciting and very sad at the same time because we saw all the people out there that were disappointed, and those were just our patrons, and we hadn't even opened the tickets to the general admission folks yet. So, we're sitting here knowing that a lot of people are very excited, and that perhaps even more people than that are very disappointed. And that's a weird place to be, because I don't want to disappoint people. Like, we're in this to entertain people, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, the idea that by our actions we are disappointing people sucks.
Yeah. You know what? Let's go back in time and never start Kingslingers so that we don't have to disappoint.
There you go.
I feel like under many other circumstances, we would just say, that's fine. We'll just scale up the thing and just do more. But unfortunately, it's like, in this case, the thing is like a bus that has a limited amount of seats on it and a limited number of time slots. And that is just the way it is, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So
and we already did scale up, right? Like, when we
true.
Originally, this whole thing was the brainchild of our listeners and friends and partners in this whole event. Jody and Sam, you might recognize them as Pear Jane and Baby Can You Dig Your Sam from the Reddit. They basically came to us with this idea after we said we were going to organize something. They had a PowerPoint presentation. It was awesome and amazing, and we were immediately on board, and they are hugely helpful in getting us to where we are, and then all the other work that's going to have to go into planning this thing from here on out. So we just wanted to say thank you to them, before we get into everything else. But basically, they came to us with this idea, and the idea was, we'll do a Saturday tour and we'll do the show Saturday night, right? And the SK Tours, who is sponsoring this event for us, run 2 tours a day, basically. And so there was going to be one tour with you and I on it, and there was going to be another tour without you and I on it. And that was our plan. Yeah. And basically, we got back the survey results and saw, there's a lot of people very interested in those packages, and there's only 48 seats available on those packages. And so we basically immediately contacted SK Tours and said, "Hey, can we do Sunday too?" And they said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sounds great." So they only run 2 tours a day. So that's the number of tours we had. So we doubled the number of seats we had, and obviously it was still not enough. So this is obviously the first event of this kind we've done. We've created a thing that I think is going to be big and great and wonderful, but also limited in the number of people that can do things, right? So
yep. But still very excited about this result, and we're just gonna now have to spend the next 6 months or so frantically preparing so that everybody has a fun time.
Yeah. And I do want to say, the tour tickets are sold out. That is the case, but there are still plenty of tickets to the live show event itself. The recording that's going to be happening on Saturday night, that Robin Firth herself is going to be there with us to just chat about a great many things, but probably mostly Dark Tower stuff. So that event is still for sale. You can still go in there right now. And not if you're listening to this right when it came out, not right now, but as of noon on Thursday, the 16th, you will be able to go in there and buy a ticket. It's $25 to get in. It's going to be a great event, and there's going to be a bunch of us around Derry that weekend, right? The one thing we wanted to say is that while we have booked SK Tours for Saturday and Sunday, they do run 2 tours a day every day of the week, basically. And so I believe there was that when Jody checked this for us, Friday was already sold out, which is crazy. But they still have tours available on Thursday. They still have tours available on Monday. So if you wanted to still do the tour, it wouldn't be the private tour with us, but you could reach out to them and book that through them. And I believe they're running a discount right now because they're kind of closed up shop for 2023. So if you book a tour for 2024 right now, it's 10% off. So if you wanted to come, we're hoping to do the tour as well. Disappointed you can't do it with us, but still want to come to the live show, you can do that and just reach out to SK Tours and book through them and have a great time because they're wonderful.
Yeah. There's plenty of opportunities for fun for everybody.
Yeah. And also there is going to be a Friday night trivia event that Jody and Sam are putting together for us. That is open to everyone. It is not just the tour package ticket people. So we're going to have to figure out, Matt, how we can have a place for trivia that holds 100 or more people. I think the original plan was like a bar. So I think that's gonna have to go out of the window now. But
does Bangor have any gigantic bars? Does anyone know?
Let's just go play in the sewers. We'll just like hang out in the sewers and do trivia. So yeah, I think all that to be said, this is obviously going to be it's hugely successful from a ticket sales perspective. We are blown away. We're so happy. This is one of those things that you never know. We saw the numbers that were coming in from the survey we did, but there's always like a difference between people, saying they would like to come to something and then actually having to, do it, to buy the tickets, to commit to it. And so seeing how all that came together was just incredible and overwhelming. So above all, we wanted to say thank you to all of you folks that are so excited and so kind of into what we do here, that you want to come hang out with us for a weekend and nerd out about this stuff. It's just it's overwhelming and wonderful, and it's just we're very happy right now. Yes. Yesterday was a very good day.
Yes. To say that I'm excited would be a gross understatement.
So you can check out the link in the show notes, which will head you over to our kind of information page, which has a link to Ticket Spice, or is it Splice? Ticket Spice, which is who we're kind of using for our ticket sales to check out if you want to buy a ticket for the live event. I also will say, we have a pretty lenient cancellation policy where people are able to cancel and get a full refund, for months leading up to the event. So there is always a possibility that people are going to cancel. That happens, right? It happens. Sometimes you make plans and then your plans change and you can't do things anymore and you have to cancel, and tickets might open up, and we will do our best to notify folks of when those tickets open up. We're not going to be able to have a wait list or anything like that. It'll just kind of be first come, first serve, but we will let people know if and when that happens.
That's right.
I think that was everything, Matt. We're so excited. Holy crap.
Yep.
Now you and I have to sit down and start like planning what the show is going to be. We know Robin's going to be there, but we can't disappoint these people. We got to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have that done well in advance.
You don't give yourself enough credit. We'll do it in May.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
It's a whole month. It's a whole month ahead of time.
That is a whole month. Yeah. That's the spirit.
No, I mean, honestly, right now is like where the real work begins, right? We've kind of have the basic outline of what this thing is going to be. And now we've got to get to work, and we're going to be doing that, especially with the help of Jody and Sam, who have just been incredible so far to help us create this thing, doing stuff and having ideas and being able to get stuff done in a way that we just we could not have. So we're so thankful to them.
Yes.
And to all of you.
I want to reiterate, this definitely would not have happened without Jody and Sam.
Nope, definitely not. Yep. It would have just been like a meetup where we would have been like, hey, Matt and I are at this bar in Bangor. Anyone want to come hang out? That would have been the extent of it. Yeah. All right. We will return you now to our wonderful, rousing conversation about It Chapter 2. This is a really good one, folks. We had a lot of fun talking about this movie, so you're going to enjoy it. And we'll talk more about Bangor within the coming weeks. So thank you again. And we'll see you later.
Yep. Let's step back in time now.
Why does time travel sound like a ghost for me?
That is strange, isn't it? I don't know.
All right. So hopefully that's going well. And perhaps we just had a conversation with our future selves right there. Who knows? Who knows?
Not me.
All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk about It Chapter 2. This movie was written by Gary Dauberman. It was directed once again by Andy Muschietti, and it stars Bill Skarsgård, Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, Bill Hader, and a bunch of digital recreations of children.
Uh-huh.
Matt, come on.
So look. First off, let me just put the affirmative case here. You just named a bunch of really great actors.
True.
Yeah. And another thing that I guess it's going to come up one way or another, so I might as well just fess up, is I was on vacation. I was visiting my brother this weekend, And so I had to fit this movie in where I could. So what I
Oh.
did is I watched it on the plane flight home
Oh,
from
okay.
San Francisco on my phone, and thus thought the children looked fine. Didn't even notice. Figure
Uh,
they must have filmed their scenes when they were still young because they looked totally normal to me.
that is fascinating. So what Matt is referring to here, if folks are like Matt and didn't realize it, this film features several scenes with the younger actors from the first movie in them. Of course, it is 2 years later. Those actors have gotten older, but they need to make them look like they were back in the first movie. So they did a little bit of digital de-aging on these characters, and I think they were successful and unsuccessful in different ways. I feel like the actor who played Ben is the least successful in the digital de-aging. He looks the most fake to me. I don't
Yeah.
know if that actor had lost weight, and so not only did they have to de-age him, but it felt like they had to add to him a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked a little weird. I mean, the parts that you really notice is with their mouths, the way their
Mm-hmm.
mouths move. Just it never it at least at the time it felt a little bit fake. Um, but I think that gets into Matt why they had to do this digital de-aging is because of the thing that I think we talked about on the miniseries, which is the biggest problem this story has is the structural choices you are forced to make decisions about when you're adapting this work.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this I was thinking about this a lot this week because there's this really interesting thing where you look at it as a book, as if you're going to adapt this, and like I think the most logical conclusion to come to when looking at this book is exactly what they did in the first movie, which is like, oh, like the easiest and most clearly adaptable thing in this book is a bunch of kids fight an evil clown over the course of summer, right? Like it is in and of itself a contained story with arcs, with a beginning, with an end, with action, with drama. Like that, like looking at the story, that is the thing that I think is very easy to carve out, throw it down, and make a pretty good movie about. And that's exactly what they did. But that's not what it is. Like that like we said that while we were covering the book, it is not a story of a bunch of kids coming together and fighting an evil clown. It's a story about a bunch of adults 27 years later remembering their childhood, remembering these things, going through the trauma once again of these events that happened to them when they were children. And so when you structure the story this way, and when you come to it chapter 2, you go, shit, what do we do here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. Okay. To maybe perhaps even reframe what my position here is. It's more like you told me how much you hated this movie for so long that
Uh-huh.
I was expecting to just find it to just be an absolute burning pile of shit. And
Which it
and
is.
then and then and then what happened was like for the whole first hour, I just was really into it, and I was like, yeah, they're introducing the characters, they're hitting a lot of the beats that I wanted them to hit. I'm feeling the things that I kind of expect and want to be feeling based on these beats. They seemed, that the actors all seem to be either doing a great job portraying the character from the page, or at least having a spin on it that makes it fun to watch and engaging. And all of that was happening, and I was like, I don't know what Scott's talking about. This is I hear the engine revving up, getting ready to go, and then kind of what happened is the reason I say this here is like then it kind of took on all the problems that you're introducing
Mhm.
in your opening statement here, which is like it kind of loses cohesiveness at a narrative level. It loses sense of like where your stakes are supposed to be
Yeah.
from in a scene to scene fashion. You actually lose track of the geography and the motivations of characters pretty badly, actually, especially for the adults. Like I think we
Mhm.
know the kid characters pretty well, but like the kid characters, in terms of narrative propulsiveness, everything is super lost because it's essentially just a bunch of vignettes where it's like this is what happened between minute 120 and 125 of the previous film is all of these scenes where the kids are being individually stalked by
Yeah.
it, and it's like, oh, so none of this matters. And,
Well, that's the fascinating part about it to me, is it ranges from completely irrelevant to incredibly important information about who the characters are as people, right? Like in this movie, they make Richie gay, and like I actually really like it. I like that as a choice. I enjoy it, but it's this really weird thing where that didn't exist in the previous movie. It was not there. Like, so you have this incredibly important scene that kind of defines Richie's big secret, and it's just in this movie, and so like it just like this is not important based on that story, but it is important. It's very important. It's important to who the person is as a character, and it's just so weird to me. And I think it is that problem of when you go to make the adult section of the book a standalone story, you can't. You can't, because the adult section of the book is remembering what happened when they were kids. And so like I can almost see them sitting down at this table and be like, okay, adult section, what do they do? What do they do until the climax? They remember the stuff we already did in the other movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we're gonna have to write some new like
right. It's interesting because it's not what I thought they were gonna do. Like in my head, I was like, okay, then they do the adult part, they do the adult half somehow, and it was more like, oh no, this movie is what I thought the first movie was gonna be, except they also did the whole the entire the entire kids section, and then they like backfilled. And I think fundamentally the backfilling is the choice that I have the most sort of mixed feelings around. And then, okay, so I guess, it's fine. I don't feel a strong desire to actually defend the movie against you, because like the last 30 minutes to an hour were way too convoluted. Well, set aside even the flashbacks to the kids stuff. On the adult side of things, it was way too convoluted, because you could see that they had all these threads that they had to carry through based on the book, where it's like, okay, you've got Bowers, and you've got to have Eddie get injured, and you've got and like they just gave up on having Mike not be there. They just totally changed that.
Yeah.
And in a way that actually made things feel more convoluted and sort of less emotionally.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about Mike. Yeah.
We do have to talk about Mike. Just as an overall, as a gestalt, though, it felt very like ending of Star Wars Episode 1, where it's like too many things, too much, too there are moments when I felt like, okay, this is the moment when they're going to confront Pennywise and defeat Pennywise, and then it was like, not only was that not the moment, but there were like 2 more fake out moments before they actually finally got around to doing it. Yeah. And I just felt the like narrative tension draining away. And like by the time Eddie dies, you're just like, okay, yeah, well, I guess that might as well happen. They had squandered. You just can't have an action scene that lasts that long unless your name is James Cameron.
It was so long, man. Yeah. The entire from the moment they do the ritual of Chud, which a fascinating choice to include that in this movie, but then just be like, psych, it's not a real thing, or it doesn't, or it just fails. From that moment till the end of the movie is like 45 minutes.
Yeah. I was shocked, because I was like, what is the rest of the movie? I genuinely was. I was like looking at the time. I was like, okay, we've got Pennywise in the box, and there's 45 minutes left, and then he gets out of the box, and then all that other shit. I mean, some of it is good. Like, I actually like the idea. I actually like the idea from a book reader's perspective, that it's like, okay, they're standing up to it. They're having the sort of psychic battle of wills, and then he goes into the box, and then it's like, yay, we won. And then it's like, no, you didn't. He's not. He's stronger than you think. It's going to take more than just kind of standing up to him for a second, which is analogous basically to Bill standing up to him and, biting down with his mind and then missing. And then they have to kind of re-entrench. That felt really good. That moment felt really good. Then it just spirals out of control, and too many things. there's stuff in there that I liked. Like I really
Yeah.
liked. I really actually liked Ben and Bev being in like separate like death chambers and saving each other by Ben like screaming that he loves her. I thought that was great. I love that. But like, there's just so much other stuff in there where you're like, again, not that it's not that it's bad. It's that it's too long. That's the
Yeah,
problem. It's
yeah.
just that it's too
Well,
long.
and to your Star Wars metaphor, like we're cutting between that and Eddie and Richie doing their thing, and then Bill, doing his thing, and then Mike is there also, which is kind of how the movie treats Mike for most of it. Mike is there also, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much going on at the same time, and it just like that final sequence just gets exhausting. And I agree with you. By the time Eddie dies, you almost don't care anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like you've been staring at a spider with a clown head hybrid thing for like 30 minutes, and it's not even scary anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like it's just there. And then like I think you're right that there are moments in this, and there are moments in this entire movie that I really like, and that almost makes me hate it more, in that like there are like if it was just like everything was bad, like it's easy to just dismiss it, right? But like there's moments of like, oh, that's a great choice, or oh, that's an interesting thing you did, or oh, I like how you shot that sequence, and then it all gets fucked up. And I think nowhere better is this point exemplified than Bev in the Mrs. Kirsch scene, which I talked about on the podcast where you're reading the book, because this was a sequence that I thought was really really good in this movie that I didn't like, and rewatching it, I basically still have that same opinion. I thought the scene escalates in tension very very well until out of the darkness materializes a 9 foot tall CGI Kirsch monster, and it just kills everything that the scene was doing up until that point, and it just becomes silly. And like I feel like one of the things we said about the first movie is that like it did these big loud scare moments, but it also dealt in subtlety a lot. It dealt in there's just going to be random Pennywises like in the
Mm-hmm.
background that you might not even see, or like, oh, isn't that weird that librarian is just grinning at him uncomfortably in the background, and we're not even going to draw attention to it, or like, oh, everyone in Derry is watching this one children's television show weirdly, and we're really not going to comment on that at all. And in this movie, it threw all that out of the window to just smash CGI monsters against your head for 2.5 hours with no subtlety. Like it just we have to go big, big, big,
Yeah.
constantly, 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 constantly,
Yeah.
nonstop.
I mean, yeah. The best parts are definitely where they don't do that. And I can
Yeah.
name two, and then maybe you'll disagree about the third being an example or not. But the first two is just, first of all, also the most horrifying scenes of the movie for me. Number one, the murder of Adrian Mellon.
Oh yeah,
Did I say it
wonderful.
right?
Yeah.
Like really deeply upsetting actually, because it's just guys beating the shit out of these two poor men,
Yeah.
and then throwing one of them over the bridge, and then Pennywise, you see Pennywise like pull him out of the water, and it's all very blurry. It's
Mhm.
very, what's great about it, and I think one thing I kind of overall like about the art direction is that Pennywise is always like vaguely misshapen in a way that's disconcerting, and you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah.
um and he's got the glowing eyes, but almost like the beings, like no human body is actually quite shaped that way. That was the more disturbing part of that. And you always just saw him either like through sort of like out of focus, or like there's water on the lens or whatever, and then the balloons come out from under the bridge, and it's like, wow, that was a great execution of that scene.
Mhm.
That was like a perfect execution of that scene. And I love that. And then the other one, I'm like I say I love that, is like these are the two scenes that I like, that I found like upsetting in that way, where part of me is like, I wish this wasn't in the movie, and it's like, well, I don't really, but what the source of that emotion is like, God, that felt bad.
Mhm.
And so the second one is the little girl who goes under the bleachers
Oh my
following the
gosh. Yeah.
Firefly. And again, you're talking about subtlety. It's like you're just seeing his face in the shadow with a little flame, and he's talking and being quiet. It's sort of like the Georgie sewer drain scene, except sort of like more so and better.
Yeah.
um and there was something about like just the 1 2, and then he's like sitting there with his face, like his wall-eyed eyes and his like drool coming out of his mouth, and then she says, "You're supposed to say 3," and then we get the like flash of CGI monstrosity, but it's like a tenth of a second, really.
Yeah.
And you almost don't even see it, which is kind of a blessing, really. So like those are 2 things where I'm like, that was truly horrifying in the genuine sense of the word. And that's where the movie is strong. And then you're totally right that giant CGI spider chasing them around for 30 minutes unsuccessfully is the most boring thing in the world, really, like aside from a few cool moments that are thrown in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that sequence with that little girl. And I think it was one of the moments where the movie like makes really interesting creative choices. Like that wasn't a sequence from the book, right? But
Mhm.
but they created something, and I think it also really served to answer the question that we kind of posited in the first one, which is with this Skarsgård performance, who the fuck is ever going to walk up to this clown?
Mhm.
And so I really like the choice to use her birthmark as this
Mhm.
this this thing that isolates her, just like the rest of the losers, right? This is this thing that isolates her from the people around her, and it is this thing on which Pennywise capitalizes
Mhm.
and uses to lure her in. I thought that was really great and really effective and wonderful, and I wish the rest of the movie were more like that than everything else it was. The 2 great sequences. I totally agree with you.
The third ambiguous one is the one where Bill chases the boy into the House of Mirrors, which I guess I found actually stressful and upsetting, because like I really wanted Bill to save the kid, like meaning I was actually invested, and then Pennywise having the kid between Bill and himself, and then smashing his head against the glass over and over, I thought was
Hmm.
just really well done, just like visual horror, and the sort of slow inevitability of it as Bill fails to make any difference at all. I thought that was a pretty like the reason I say it's ambiguous is it's like it's more of a set piece. It's more of a CGI spectacle than the other 2.
Yeah.
But it still got me. And that's why I included here.
I think it's effective as a character piece too. Like I do like this kind of they took Bill's guilt over his brother,
Yeah.
and then extrapolated that out into they took the kid from the book, the skateboard kid, and they
Yeah.
said, oh, what if we put him in in immediate danger? What
Hmm.
would Bill's response to that be? And I think that's really interesting. I think maybe the only reason I didn't like the scene is because in my mind it's still ambiguous whether or not that happened, and I think that's something that I think the movie struggles with sometimes is they have Pennywise kind of scare them and fake them out so many times you lose track of what is legitimately happening or not. Like,
Yeah.
is that child really dead? It's
I
like, or
yeah.
not. I
I
don't know.
I don't know either. I had this thought while watching the movie that I wasn't sure, but I was like, I guess I lean toward yes, even though it introduces a lot of pragmatic issues,
Hmm.
l- like we're like is there a blood splattered part of the uh, of the House of Mirrors now, which
Yeah.
are things that the movie I think somewhat to its credit just like keeps you from ever having to really think about. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't really provide you a lot of scenes where you're like, well, hold on a second, how did Pennywise you know get rid of the it just doesn't it does a good job not creating situations that would make you start asking nitpicky questions about the
Sure.
nature of the
Hmm.
supernatural magic, because the book just deals with it by more or less showing like Pennywise kills kids and either pulls them down into the sewer where they can't be found, or just like leaves their mangled body there, and that's it. Um,
Hmm.
so, um, yeah, that was I like that stuff. It was horrifying. I like all the and it's like I could go on about the stuff that I liked. I mean, like all the adult actors are kind of nailing it, I think. I mean, so you want to talk about Mike? We can talk. Let's have Mike corner here, because the thing about
Okay.
Mike is like the defense the defense of Mike, I guess, is simply that I think the actor does a good job of portraying Book Mike, and then the script says, nah, you're going to do a bunch of shit that Mike wouldn't actually do, and then
Yeah.
the actor's like, okay, fine, that's what the script says, but I'm still going to basically play him as Book Mike.
Yeah. My favorite little factoid that I was researching in preparation for this episode was the fact that Isaiah Mustafa, who played the adult Mike, read it 8 times before filming started to really get in the head of Mike Hanlon. And I'm like, that was a waste of time, buddy, because the script does not give you Mike stuff. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I mean, like, it's interesting, right? Because we talked already in the first movie how they took the history stuff away from Mike and gave it to Ben, and they just kind of give it back to him here.
Hmm.
Um, it's just like, oh, he's really obsessed with Derry's history now because he's the one that stayed. And like as a script writer, you're just like, oh, I wish that was established at all.
Uh-huh.
Like how Stephen King did it. Um, but fine, whatever, right? Like
Uh-huh.
whatever. They made him very unhinged, and I think that largely works because like that's the kind of pouring through Mike's diaries and things that he's reading as we go through the book, and he seems like he's on the edge. He's barely hanging on.
Hmm.
Like he's wrestling with this great choice of calling these people here and doing this to them again, and they took that and I think turned it up a little bit, but I do think it's effective. I think I agree with you that the weird thing that they did with that is like make Mike a sneaky liar to
Yeah.
his friends, which is such a weird choice. So he lies twice, at least the movie posits, and this is, by the way, this is a tangent kind of. I was like, after the Jade Orient scene, they're all like mad at Mike and they're like, you lied to us to get us here. And I'm sitting here watching the movie going, what are you talking about, everyone? He called you and told you that it's back and you have to come because of the promise you made. And then I rewatched it because I was confused. And I realized that the movie is actually pretty clever about this because he never actually says that to anyone except Stan.
Uh-huh.
Stan is the only one that says it's back, isn't it? And he says it's starting again. Everyone else, the camera just like cleverly cuts off,
Yeah.
like right before that. And I think like him doing it with Stan made me just kind of like through the laws of storytelling be like, oh, well, I'm going to assume he has a similar conversation with everyone else
Yeah.
that they talk, we made the promise, it's coming back, it's starting again, you have to come back. But the movie treats it as if that did not happen. The movie treats it as if he did not say that to everyone else, and they are just like they knew they're like kind of weirded out by the fact that they got terrified when Mike called and don't understand why, and they just came, but that he misled them in some way, which it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I think this script and a lot of the scripts we end up talking about on our various shows actually have this issue, which I'm just going to call the curse of refusing the call in modern storytelling,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which is that people heard at some point that there's an important part of every story, especially sort of adventure stories like this one, where the heroes have to refuse the call in order to get you, the audience, to understand, like, why are they putting themselves in danger? Well, that they have to be convinced of the magnitude of the danger, and then so first they have to refuse the call to adventure and the call to risk, and then something has to happen that turns them around, and that's how you do it. That's how you do these stories. You need to have a
Mm-hmm.
refusing the call moment, and very often it's a huge waste of time, and it just feels like treading water, and it makes you like the character a little bit less,
Yeah.
especially in situations like this where they have plenty of goddamn reason to kill the clown because it's a murder clown that eats children. And also, just like the source material does a pretty good job of being like, yes, they're all terrified, they're all absolutely scared shitless of the supernatural evil, but like, it's not that they're refusing the call, it's that they're all struggling with the reality of what they're going to have to do, and maybe some of them are even entertaining thoughts that they might leave, but they're not gonna. And
Yeah.
that's who these characters are. Like, it's So the same thing happened in the prior movie where they all split up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a refusing the call influence story bait, and then they did it again here.
Yeah.
And in both times it's like, I mean, maybe it would have been okay if you had done one of the two of the times that they did this, but overall it just feels like this kind of like lazy application of a rule you read about in a screenwriting book, where you're like, yeah, they've
Yeah.
got to like, I still don't know why Richie came back. Like Richie, he leaves, he drives away,
Yeah.
and then he shows up and he saves Mike with the hatchet, and it's actually a hilarious moment. Um, uh, uh, yeah, but why did he come back?
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to go away from Mike quite yet,
Sure.
because I have more to say there, and I think you do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that they try to do, the scaffolding that they put on this refusing the call moment, is Bev's nightmares. This idea that if we don't kill it now, we're all going to die. Like this.
Yeah.
I think they even say this in the book. Just like punt it 27 years into the future. Like they think about doing that briefly at one moment. It's like,
Yeah.
in 27 years we'll be old and it won't be our problem anymore. And
Yeah.
in this movie they need to put specific reasons why they can't do that. It's like you feel like there was a note somewhere that's saying like, I don't understand why these people would stay. It doesn't make any sense to me. So you have to put motivation in there, and the motivation is Bev has, through her connection with the Deadlights, seen every single one of them die and knows they're going to die. And if they don't stop Pennywise right now in this cycle, before the cycle's over, they will all die.
Yeah, they'll all die horribly.
Yeah.
Like Stan. It really, the script does feel a little bit noted to death in places, because the scene where it eats the little girl, it while it's a good scene, it actually kind of feels like, because of how disconnected it is, it feels like they're reminding us, like, oh, remember that it eats children. Do you remember that it eats children? Like it's doing that actively. Like, if they had, if for every day that they don't kill it, it's probably eating another child. So that should be the motivation. It's almost weird that girl's murder is totally disconnected from the plot at large, and specifically disconnected from any kind of like motivation. Like, it's not like they see another little girl went missing, and Mike's like, we could have stopped this, like that was it was right there. It was right there, and they just didn't connect it. They had to do this thing with the dream, which I agree, it makes them all seem like more like cowards, basically, because it's like, you're not doing this out of any kind of heroic impulse. You're literally just like, okay, I guess we have to. We literally have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it does. And this whole thing, to kind of steer it back to Mike now, I think this whole thing kind of escalates to the final confrontation, where we learn that Mike's deceit in the first half of the movie, which was, I mean, not direct lying, but more like, I called you and told you to come back, and maybe just, it was a quick message. I didn't give you the full, like, a lie of omission. I didn't give you the full story in my phone call. But in the finale, they have him, consciously scratch out one side of the urn thingy, the Ritual of Chud urn thingy, that depicts the ritual failing horribly and them all dying, and that is just like him actively lying, and then like, but you don't understand, they just didn't believe hard enough, and it's just like, he just seems crazy and wrong. Like, he just seems crazy and wrong. But then the movie also kind of says that he's also kind of right, because it was their belief in the end that brings them to success, right? It's weird and off-putting. And like, I think the last thing you need to do in the third act of your film is make 5 characters hate the other in this movie about the power of friendship and the power of togetherness, and this shared experience that grants them this power. Like, making them all suddenly hate Mike it's like an inverse of what happens in the book, right? Where they channel through the weakened Mike to save his life.
Yeah.
And that is a representative of their collective power. This is them turning on him specifically.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got McAvoy, screaming, "Mike, you fucking son of a bitch! How dare you!" And like, it feels so like, oh God, like
Yeah.
none of this should be happening here.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel, for all that I'll praise their individual performances, and I really I also love the scene in the Jade of the Orient restaurant, like kind of aside from that, and I guess maybe like the final scenes after everything is said and done, I don't know that I like buy their rapport quite as much as adults. It's not terrible. Like I think like the Eddie Ritchie stuff is pretty great.
Yeah.
I actually honestly thought that the Bill Bev stuff was sort of like nearly perfunctory.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't I, I don't understand why Bev got with Ben at the end of this movie. Like,
yeah,
I love them together, right? And I love I think those two actors do a very good job, right? But it felt like the script said, "Oh, now they realize they love each other and come together." And like none of that was set up for me either. It felt weird to me.
Yeah, well, I think that so the reading experience of it, of course, is that you identify with Ben, and by you I mean everyone identifies with Ben, and you desperately want Ben to end up with Bev, and so you obviously understand why Ben wants to be with Bev.
Yeah.
What you don't understand is why Bev wants to be with Ben.
Yeah.
And the movie also doesn't tell you that. And to be fair, I don't know that the book really told you that either.
I mean, it feels like it's just the poem. Like at least in this movie, it's like just the poem.
Yeah.
It's like, that was a really good haiku you wrote me.
It's a really good benku. Yeah.
And so I'm in love with you now.
Yeah. Well, it made her feel good about herself in a world where nobody else. I mean, look, I'll do some heavy lifting for the movie. The thing about Bev in the movie specifically, which is not really in the book, is that she has this like reputation, because her mom died and her dad sucks and she's poor, that sort of there just seems to be this pervasive thing of like, Bev is a slut, Bev is a bad girl.
Yeah.
And which seems to just come out of nowhere. It's literally just like, oh, well, we can pick on her, and so we're just going to make up all these lies. And so the poem represents one person. She doesn't even know who it is, but one person out there in the world who actually sees something other than all of that when they look at her, sees something beautiful. And the idea of that, I think the movie dramatizes the idea that the poem actually really matters to her. And she assumes it's Bill because it's like, well, Bill's like the only one who like overtly seems to like me, and
yeah,
it's the kind of thing where it happens a lot in movies that are really complicated, where it's like I can put the pieces together in my head intellectually and explain to you what they were doing, but in the course of watching the movie, yes, you're left very much feeling like, huh, what?
Yeah, I agree. Like, especially with the book knowledge, you can kind of piece these moments together, but just not great there. I think I agree with you on all the actors too. I mean, like I we talked about Mike, and I think that actor does a really great job considering the material he's given. I think Bill Hader is excellent. Of course, I think it's one of those ones. There was this whole big news story that went out that was like, they asked all the child actors, who would you want cast as you in the adult version of this movie? Finn Wolfhard said Bill Hader, and that's what happened. Not because he said it. And then the girl who played young Bev said Jessica Chastain. That also happened. But they were talking about casting Jessica Chastain in this movie like before the first one even came out. Like, she was one of the earliest people cast in this. I think they all do a really great job. I think I love James McAvoy. I don't think this is my favorite James McAvoy performance. I think he's good here. I do think they give Bill good stuff to work with. I think like one of the complaints that people had about Bill in the book, and I think one of the complaints that you had, is like for a lot of the adult stuff, he's just like he doesn't have a lot to do. It's more about him just like refinding the leader inside of him, and so he just kind of mopes around and is depressed and sad and lame a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so adding the trying to save the other kid. I think adding the little wrinkle of he wasn't really sick, he was pretending to be sick,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was a really interesting choice, because I think it helps, like in a thing where you can't see inside the character's mind all the time. It helps scaffold the grief really,
Mm-hmm.
and the guilt
Mm-hmm.
really quickly. It's like, oh well, I feel. Why do you feel guilty? Well, I feel guilty because I was pretending to be sick.
Mm-hmm.
And the quick and easy way of doing something there,
Yeah.
liked that.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
which is the weakest of, because I kind of think the Ben actor is the weakest of the group.
Yeah. I mean, just I think so. Like, I don't think he's bad. I think it's just it doesn't soar the way a lot of the others do. Like the others are just so fun,
Mm-hmm.
and Ben, he's almost too hot. He's like 20% too hot, and it's like distracting.
Well, they do this wonderful fake out when they introduce him, right? Where like you cut to a glass window that says like Hanscom and Associates, and then we immediately cut to this middle-aged overweight guy, that like if you squint, and I think they stunt cast him this way,
Uh-huh.
like you could see the young Ben
Yeah.
in this guy, and like, oh, there he is, and then we do this like snap cut to the real Ben that is for some reason talking to them via a computer, which
Uh-huh.
like that was just like a weird like scene choice for me, like
Uh-huh.
that someone wrote that scene to, oh, but he's not actually here, he's just calling you from his cabin on the computer. Like, I don't, that was that weird to you? Like, why isn't he there? Like, I don't know, it was just weird to me.
I don't. I guess it didn't strike me as weird. It might. The word I might use is it struck me as a little forced, because it's like the point of it is for that dramatic. I think borderline comedy beat of snapping to show Ben, and he's actually hot.
Yeah.
And not only that, but he's like in this like palatial, beautiful apartment with like this amazing art on the walls
Yeah.
and rich
Mm-hmm.
mahoganies and so forth. Um, and showing him in that setting, I think actually made the moment land more than it would have if it were just like, oh yeah, that wasn't Ben. This guy over here is Ben.
Yeah.
That might have been confusing. Like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. Just say maybe it would have been confusing if they were just like, no, Ben is across the table.
You're not wrong. I do think it just like it just feels geographically weird to me.
Sure.
To like then we cut to a computer screen, and it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering the scene, but I feel like they're doing the thing where it's a laptop camera, so it's
Yeah.
like pointed up at you. And again, I think this is them doing short talk. Look how powerful and imposing he is, but also we just kind of see up his nose, and it's like it just feels clunky to me in the scene of like, we don't really understand why this is going on, and then he's like, it's the whole thing feels like a comedy beat, because it's almost like too forced of like our introduction to this character is him being like, why are you so obsessed with the money? Just appreciate the beauty of the art, the natural. And it's just like, come on, man. This is just kind of silly.
So the movie has a strange relationship with humor.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Some moments are just funny. Like and some moments are funny in a really offbeat way that I liked, like Richie murdering the bad guy whose name is
Henry Bowers,
and then saying, well, that was long overdue. Get it? Because we're in a library, and then vomiting immediately. That was like my favorite single gag in the movie, but there's a lot of great stuff in there.
mm-hmm.
And then there are absolutely inexplicable moments, like the one that I can hear that you want to talk about. The leper in the pharmacy, vomiting on Eddie.
What?
And then the music. What song is it? You said it earlier.
It's Angel of the Morning.
Uh-huh.
Like a brief, like 3-second needle drop
Uh-huh.
of Juice Newton's
Uh-huh.
Angel of the Morning,
which is not even a song that I recognized, nor had any like particular connotation with. So there was no like joke there for me. There was no like, there's a funny juxtaposition between this song and the subject matter. It was just like, what,
it
like
it,
like
f- it felt like someone in the edit like said, like they were just putting that sequence together and they like threw it in there to make their co-editor laugh, and then they left it in the movie.
uh-huh.
It doesn't. It's just like I like jokes. I think things are funny, and I think there's a lot of funny stuff in this movie. Like I agree with you, but it's just so nonsensical. You're just like you're left to be like, what the fuck am I watching? Like what is this? Because like like the joke on its own is funny because Eddie is killing the leper and is like winning, and it's this triumphant moment, and then it pukes all over him disgustingly. That's funny.
Yeah.
You don't need this random, completely unestablished needle drop. I am speechless. I don't understand it at all.
If it were a reference to some other thing in the movie, like anything other than just nothing, which is what we got. Mm-hmm. Another moment, which so here's the thing. I actually love this moment, and I thought it was hilarious, but I actually couldn't tell if it was supposed to be because it doesn't seem like it should be. Mm-hmm. Is when I only saw the movie this one time, so I don't have it perfectly down, but like Richie's adult Richie, they're facing off against it. Richie says something sarcastic and triumphant in his Richie way, and then I'm gonna laugh just saying it, and it's like not a funny moment, but like Pennywise nails him with the deadlights, like a flashlight turning on, and Bill Hader's face just goes totally slack, and his eyes go glassy.
His arms drop down,
and his arms drop, and he's in this and he's in this bizarre posture, and it's like, okay, that's like funny. That's like really funny. The suddenness of it, and it's like that really kind of shouldn't be funny there. Like that should feel like shit, it got Richie. Weird. You know?
Yeah, it's so weird because I think that's exactly it. Because this. We talked about the humor in the first movie, and we talked about how I think it kind of rode the line, right? Where like there were funny moments in the movie. It was a funny movie, but it was also a very scary movie, and it successfully navigated, I think for the most part, some people might disagree with this, but successfully navigated the tone management between those two things. And I don't think this movie does. I think there are moments that are genuinely funny. I agree with you. I laughed at that moment, and then my first reaction to that was, should I be? Is that what the movie needs in this moment? Is a joke about how, like, look, Richie's gonna go insane or die. Like, it's so weird. And sometimes, some of the jokes feel so forceful to me too. Like they're trying too hard. Like the one that really jumps out to me is I think they're getting ready to go back in the Niebolt Street house, and Bill is like, well, we're gonna have to do that thing that Richie said earlier, and then Bill Hader goes like, it's the joke where they like say the two wrong things first, and like you, the audience, know where they're going like immediately, but we still have to build up to it, and that's just like, I guess that's a little funny, but it just feels like you're trying so hard.
Yeah. I want to. I agree. Just overall, and I honestly, I don't want to belabor this and just pound it into the ground. But I maybe this is silly, but I feel like the Bill Hader being hypnotized by the deadlights and that being funny tremendously undercuts everything happening in this scene, and is in fact a critical part of what makes it kind of peter out, because it's like, okay, this is a cosmic creature that can shapeshift. And not only that, but like its true nature is this mysterious, eldritch, Lovecraftian thing where it's actually these lights. And if you look at the lights, it has you, and it's terrifying and it's weird. It's so much weirder and more otherworldly and like the clown, the whole clown thing is just a mask that this thing wears
Mm-hmm.
because it's nature, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you turn that into a joke. You turn the whole. It's like if
Yeah.
Cthulhu like tripped and fell on his face the first time you saw him, and then it's like, oh, okay, so nothing matters and this isn't scary anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
it really, really affected the whole, like how everything played out. Like I think that's why I remember this scene so like vividly in my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, why did we do it that way?
And then from there we go to I think it's after then that we do the scary, really scary, not scary at all door joke again.
Mm-hmm.
Which, but maybe it's just like a consequence of us watching these two movies back to back like this. But like every time that the movie felt like super reverential to the one that came before it, I just felt like that was weird. It's like, oh, a movie that came out 2 years ago. It's like, oh, we have to do this joke again because everyone loved that joke so much. You know, like it just like that's the same thing with the "we got to kill this fucking clown" line. It's like, oh, that was a really funny thing that people really liked in the first one, so we got to bring that back. We got to do that again. So we have to do the scary doors again.
Yeah,
with the stupid dog, and like again, it undercuts it. It's so weird. Like I think that joke worked in the Neibolt Street house as children being fucked with by Pennywise as kids. I think in the middle of the layer of it, when this is for all the marbles, it feels weird to do that many joke beats back to back to back to back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the dog thing was another one. You just mentioned it offhand, but I didn't find it particularly funny. It just distracts and bleeds the tension. And maybe, I think part of the problem in the first place is trying to have a 40-minute action scene. And I think sometimes when you have a 40-minute action scene and it's not working, maybe somebody suggests like, well, we need to break it up. We need to have some tonal variety within this 40-minute action scene, because you can't, James Cameron, master of the 40-minute action scene, will tell you that you can't have the same tone for 40 minutes. You've got to vary it. You've got to give them some wins and some losses and kind of move the ball around a bit to keep things interesting. But like they just don't do it right. It's just not right.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree. It like it's all over the place. It's a mess, and you just like the worst sin is that by the end you just don't care. And like there are, I think, really powerful emotional moments in this movie. Like I think they beautifully set up Richie as having this kind of secret, he's in love with Eddie secretly, and he has to carry that secret with him his entire life. And then he has to lose Eddie. And it's this really emotional moment, I think. And like you just kind of are so exhausted by the whole thing that you really don't care about it. And then like, it all crescendos in one of the scenes that I think generally does work, which is, Richie in the water at the very end of the movie crying, and them all kind of gathering around him and supporting him. And I think that's great. And there's a joke there that I don't think undercuts the emotionality of the scene, because he says, I don't have my glasses, I have no idea who any of you people are. Like that's good and funny, and it doesn't completely strip the emotionality of the sequence. It's just it's just a very Richie moment of, I'm uncomfortable by the extreme amount of emotion I'm feeling, and so I'm going to cut a little joke here.
Bill Hader is an absolute genius, and I think this movie made me appreciate him even more, because like there's another moment in there somewhere where they're like, Jesus, Richie, can you stop making jokes all the time? And Bill Hader says in a very like just perfect delivery, like, I'm just trying to add some levity, I guess I'll go fuck myself. And like and it's kind of funny, but also it's like, oh yeah, like Richie is literally just trying to add some levity to cheer his friends up, because that's what he's always trying to do. He's trying to cheer his friends up because he loves them, right? And he kind of feels a little hurt that they're shutting him down so much, right? And it's just and all that is conveyed with the delivery, and it's funny at the same time, right? That was I think I gotta be honest, man, like for all the shitting on this movie we've been doing, I was like pretty good and teared up for like the last like 10 minutes as we were dealing with Eddie's death and everybody departing, and it successfully pushed my buttons. It actually did. For all that I complain about like the pacing of that action scene, it's true that I just would have had so many notes on that. I was more or less tied into like wanting them to succeed and being up with the dramatic stakes of things, and sad that Eddie died, and I was mainly sad for Richie because, and by the way, I didn't mention this when you talked about the choice to make Richie gay, but like that was the sort of thing that I often, when they make that sort of change in adaptations, I'm like, okay, I guess I see why they did that, but it's unnecessary. But in this case, it was like, oh, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really interesting evolution. I buy it. The performances all sell it. It makes sense in retrospect. You can think about it that way. It
Yeah.
makes things a lot. It actually makes things sadder and more poignant in a sense, because it's like, Ben and Bev got there happily ever after, but Richie, the boy who he loved his whole life, dies, and
Yeah.
it's very sad, and it makes it hit just a little bit harder.
I agree, and this is something I debated bringing up during the book itself, and I kind of knew that we were going to have this conversation in this movie, so I held back. But there's plenty of people that had that read of Richie after reading the book,
Mhm.
and I think I don't know exactly when this was, but King was asked about it, and he basically said, "Well, no, I mean, I didn't like that wasn't in my mind while I was writing it, but sure,
Mhm.
sure."
Yeah.
And so I do think this is an absolutely fair adaptive choice, and I do think it adds something really interesting to the character. I think one of the things we complained about on the miniseries is that Richie in the miniseries, the 1990 miniseries, comes off as just kind of an asshole because
Mhm.
all they do is depict the can't stop talking trash mouth version
Mhm.
of the character, and they really put nothing underneath it. And I do think this is a way, you talked about it's very difficult to show the complexity of Richie when we can't see in his head. And this is a way of bringing that complexity and allowing you to see the more that's going on there with him.
Yeah.
It's a great choice. I really do like it a whole bunch. I do wish a little bit that it feels like this was a decision that was made after the first movie, not a decision that anyone involved in the making of the movie was conscious of while they were making the first movie. Um,
Mhm.
so I guess my one complaint would be I wish they kind of set it up in that first movie a little bit. But maybe they did, right? Maybe they like I'm just not seeing it, and they meant to by showing the interaction and the camaraderie and constant teasing and wonderfulness that is the relationship of Richie and Eddie. They were laying the groundwork for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I had essentially the same thoughts where I was like, I was actually going to ask you in this conversation, like, do you think they planned it all along? Because I certainly couldn't remember anything from the first movie that would have made me think that they had, but it's
Mhm.
not like anything in the first movie contradicts it. So,
Yeah. I mean like general thought on this movie is that not much was planned
mhm.
from the beginning.
Mm.
It to me, so to give you a little bit of background, like the first movie was like I believe they first announced that they were going to make this movie in like 2010. And I think Cary Fukunaga, he directed uh well the No Time to Die, the James Bond movie, but I think he also directed the True Detective, first season of True Detective. He was attached to this movie for a long time. Actually, he has a screenwriting credit for the first movie, and I believe he wrote a script that was like like the first and second movie. Like he wrote both scripts. They went away from his vision. I seem to remember it, like I'm vaguely remembering there were a lot of stories about his version of these movies and how fucking crazy it would have been. But they moved away from that. And to me, it feels like they shopped the script around. They workshopped the script constantly for like 6 years, and then they finally landed on a version they liked. They made the movie. It was a huge, massive hit, and then they went, okay, part two,
Uh-huh.
go. And
Do
it's
that
like,
again.
shit, we have to put the script together in three
Yeah.
months because shooting starts in 3.5 months, and we just have to throw all this and that's the type of movie it feels to me, that just like not a lot of what they had to make a lot of quick decisions in this movie, and I do think it has a lot of notes that went along with it as well. So it doesn't feel like anything in the first movie is moving to set up anything in this movie. It feels like the first movie is just an entirely independent film about these kids defeating this clown, and then everything in this movie is like, okay, we got to figure out how to work the rest of it into this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's funny, Scott. We had this whole conversation, and I still like the movie. I'm sorry to say that like as we've been talking about it, even as we've been ragging on it, I just been thinking about how much fun I had watching it. And yes, the stuff that annoyed me did annoy me, and the stuff that we've talked about, I do think it has severe problems. But like just the spectacle of it and kind of the fun of the idea is so compelling. It's almost like it is such a compelling story
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that it's hard to fuck it up, actually.
So we actually got this question in our Reddit thread last week, and I thought I'd ask you the question. And maybe your answer is just yes, this movie, but with the structure of it being so different and kind of weird, is there a way to make like a good version of the adult storyline? Because we've seen two different takes at it. Both of them kind of decided to split the kid and adult sections in half. I will say the 90s miniseries attempted to, you know, hold to the structure of the book, right? By introducing the adults right away, introducing the flashback structure right away. The difference is they had the confrontation with it happen halfway through their story, whereas the book has it happen at the end. These movies went a completely different direction with that. Is there a way to do this, quote unquote, correctly?
I mean, I don't have a better idea is the thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think what's funny is you and I agree on all the ways in which this didn't work. I think we just have slightly different emotions about that fact.
Uh-huh.
And then I don't actually have any better ideas. Like, maybe I think this is one thing that has changed about me over the years. We've been doing podcast reviews of movies specifically, and adaptations maybe in particular, is like, if I point out something doesn't work, but I don't have a better idea, then I'm more likely to cut it some slack, because maybe it's just not possible to really do it, quote unquote, right.
Yeah.
Like you don't have the same tools, right? When you don't have the ability to do internal monologue, um, you don't have all the tools of prose. You can't do the same things. You just
Mm-hmm.
can't. It's just not going to happen. And so you cheat here and there. And as cheats go, I just would have made it shorter. If you're asking what I would have done differently about this movie, I would have tried to make the movie about 30 minutes shorter. And
Mm-hmm.
I even have some candidates for stuff I might have cut out and shifted around and changed. Um, I interestingly, while I also loved what they did with Henry Bowers in this movie, generally speaking, it all kind of added up to nothing,
Yeah.
because specifically he doesn't take out Mike. So it's just like, oh, Eddie has a slight wound.
It what a weird thing to do. So they cut Audra out of this movie.
Yeah.
They cut Tom completely out, which is
Right.
the miniseries did as well. They left Henry Bowers to stab Eddie in the cheek, which is an injury he just kind of seems to just shrug off.
Yeah.
He's totally fine.
Yeah. Just Band-Aid. Yeah.
And then he gets stabbed in the chest by a knife, and
But he's fine.
He shrugs that off.
Uh-huh.
And then heads to the library to kill Mike. It is just like we already kind of commented about how in the book, like these characters are built up. Like we have this whole chapter of 3 uninvited guests, and there's a lot of drama built around. Oh, I think we even had a conversation about it. It was like, oh, look at the curveball that these 3 characters could throw into the mix of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then it's all kind of anticlimactic. I mean, I think Henry's climax is like the most climactic.
Yeah.
But I think this does really highlight how superfluous it is, especially as you said, if you take away the one actual act of change he has on the group as a whole. Like it would be very easy to just completely excise Henry Bowers from the movie. I don't think you'd lose anything at all.
Yeah. I liked him seeing the balloon in the window and reacting to it and getting,
that was great. Yeah.
Like I loved all that, but
I thought the Patrick Hockstetter like zombie was very uncomfortably creepy under that bed. Like that was great. That was good. I like that.
Yeah. That's why it's funny what we're both doing is we're not wanting to say, yeah, they should have cut out Henry Bowers completely because there's so much great stuff in there. But like plot wise, if you're trying to cut out 30 minutes, that's a great place to start because it doesn't matter to the plot at all. And it is just so anticlimactic. It's just like, yep, chopped him in the head. And this, remember, like so much Henry Bowers stuff in the first movie.
Yeah.
It's anticlimactic there too because they just shove him down the well. You know,
the well is another example of why I firmly believe that this movie was not that no plans were made between movies because they throw him down a well and we like hear him fall forever and we're like, oh, he's definitely dead. And then like the solution in this movie is just like, psych.
Yeah.
He's just here. He is. He just got fleshed out with a bunch of kid parts. You thought he was dead? You silly goose.
Yeah.
That's like, it's just weird. It's just weird to do it that way.
Yeah. It's true. I think this is kind of a Stephen King Gardner thing, honestly, is like he tosses in these elements like Henry Bowers, and when he tosses them in, he doesn't necessarily know what he's going to do with them in the story.
Yeah.
And so even in the book, Henry Bowers as a story element is like he's a character who motivates a lot of our heroes' actions, but then he kind of has to have his line truncated at some point, and it's anticlimactic, and and then when you translate that to a movie, so it doesn't quite translate as well.
I mean, the power of adaptation is you can look at that stuff from a third party perspective and go, oh, we can just get rid of this. And I think they should have.
Yeah, that's one thing.
I understand the like wanting the talking to the moon thing, and I agree with you. That whole sequence in the mental institution is great, but yeah.
Could have gotten rid of that. Could have drastically shortened the final confrontation by cutting out at least one like cycle of them running in a big circle around the room, which just again it actually just makes Pennywise seem less scary because you, at a certain point you start asking yourself like, why doesn't he just do the thing that he did to Eddie, where he just like shoots out an arbitrarily long spike and stabs him through the chest? If he could do that once, you shouldn't be asking yourself this question in a movie. Like it's a sign that you've messed up your sense of the physics of the encounter. But I was definitely like, he should have caught him and killed them all. They keep getting away. They shouldn't be getting away.
Yeah.
It just makes him less scary. It makes me buy into the scene less.
I agree. Yeah. We have not talked about the thing I hate the most about this movie, though.
Okay.
Interesting. We saved this for the very end, but we haven't talked about our man Stanley Uris the entire time.
Okay.
And here is the adaptive choice that makes the least amount of sense to me ever. So this movie, at the very end of it, a letter that Stan wrote to the rest of the losers shows up, and we read the letter, and it turns out Stanley did not commit suicide, Matt. It was a noble act of sacrifice because he knew that if he came to Derry, that he did not have the strength to stand with them and would only weaken their overall power. What the fuck?
That's
awful.
The movie does not know what to do with the idea of Stan killing himself at all. Like even when it shows it shows it in a weird way where it's like, what am I supposed to feel about this actually? And I don't mean, I mean like via the language of film, what are you asking me to feel about this? Because like narratively, it's like, oh no, Stan killed himself. That's what you're supposed to feel about this. Yeah. But the movie is so weird in how it conveys this. There's no horror to it. There's no particular pathos to it because we don't see him choosing to do this. It's a weird moment. And then again, thoughts you shouldn't be having while you're watching the movie is, wait a second. So somehow he found all of their addresses. He found the addresses of these 6 other people who he hasn't seen in 27 years.
And has textually forgotten.
He wrote 6 handwritten copies of the same letter
before he killed himself. Yeah. And then he was at it for like 3 hours.
And then he went into the bathroom and killed himself.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if it's like totally dissonant with the character of Stan that we know, but it certainly isn't like it certainly isn't like, oh yeah, it would make sense that Stan would do that. It's just dumb because it's like, wait, like just if you're quote unquote brave enough to heroically sacrifice yourself in the bathtub, then you're brave enough to go back to the town to fight the clown. Like I just I don't like emotionally buy that, you know. It doesn't connect for me.
Yeah, I like it's awful. It cheapens what is supposed to be this really tragic moment of failure. Of
Yeah.
that, like he couldn't hack it, he couldn't take it, and it's sad and tragic. But it completely strips it of that. I also like the note that he writes. Like this is one of the things the movie really pisses me off about is like, what is this movie like? What is the theme of this movie?
Uh-huh.
Right? And the note is like the thing that ends the movie. And so you think this would be like the movie making its declarative conceit statement. But listen to this. I'm going to read it for you.
Okay.
Dear losers, I know what this must seem like, but this isn't a suicide note. You're probably wondering why I did what I did. It's because I knew I was too scared to go back, and if we weren't together, if all of us alive weren't united, I knew we'd all die. Which, by the way, like it feels like the studio note was adding the word alive to that sentence, because like if we weren't together, if we weren't united, it was like, well, wait a minute, then him killing himself doesn't make any sense. So they had to add the word if we weren't. It only counts if all of us are alive together. If one of us is dead, that doesn't count as all together. That doesn't count. Anyway, so it says, so I made the only logical move. I took myself off the board. Did it work? Well, if you're reading this, you know the answer. I lived my whole life afraid of what would come next, afraid of what I might leave behind. Don't. Be who you want to be. Be proud. And if you find someone worth holding on to, never ever let them go. Follow your own path, wherever that takes you. Think of this letter as a promise I'm asking you to make, to me, to each other, an oath. See, the thing about being a loser is you don't have anything to lose. So be true, be brave, stand, believe, and don't ever forget we're losers, and we always will be. Like, there's like 6 different themes in there.
Yeah.
And none of them are really what the movie's about. Like I think what they're trying to do is like he's trying to encapsulate every single character's arc, right? Like the be who you want to be, that's speaking to Richie, right? Like, you know, like be honest to who you are, be that person. If you find someone worth holding on to, never let them go. We cut to Ben and Bev, like that's you know, like follow your own path wherever that takes you. What is that? What? Who? Huh? I guess that's supposed to be Mike, right? It's like they're trying to encapsulate all these disparate arcs in one like concise statement of theme, and it just is like I don't what is none of this means anything really, actually.
Mom always said life is like a box of chocolates.
Exactly.
It's just a mush of feel good is what it ends up being. I mean, so here, like, I'm going to confess to you that while that was being read in the movie, I was like, oh my God. But like, you're right that when you read it out like that, it is just, it's like nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, and like they're like attacking me specifically, right? Because like the be true, be brave, stand, like that's some of my favorite recurring shit in King, right? Like this is the central idea, but it's just like, it doesn't make sense in the context of what's happening here. And you're right. Like it's the perfect, like activate your emotions gobbledygook that when you read that in voiceover over images of your characters, like being happy and, you know, riding into the sunset, like, yeah, it's going to work emotionally on you 100%, but like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm trying, you know, it's funny. I'm trying to remember like the ending of it, right? The ending of it, the thesis statement of the ending of the book is more about the idea of the impact of our childhoods on who we become.
Yeah.
And the complexity of that. I don't know that I can actually state it as succinctly as like a one sentence thing, because in a sense the whole book is this statement that is building this beautiful tapestry of what your childhood means to you as an adult, and like none of that is present in the outro, so I just think that's interesting. It's like they kind of just picked some other stuff.
They did, and just the idea that these words of wisdom, these pearls, are coming from Stan, the character who like textually couldn't handle the truth of all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like wasn't able to both learn from his childhood but also grow beyond it. Like failed to do that. That's Stan's failure, right? Like if this is a book about how, we eventually move past our childhood and it is incredibly defining for us, but it is not everything and we do have to eventually move beyond it. Stan was unable to do that. He was unable to reconcile the truth of what his childhood was with the reality of his life, and that is why he ended up taking on his own life. And then to give the words of wisdom, the themes of the movie to that character doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yes.
Shouldn't the characters that went through the experience have learned the lessons themselves?
I think they didn't. Honestly, I think they just totally were like, we're not going to do the thing with Stan that the book does with Stan, so we got to do something else with Stan.
Mm-hmm.
And then they fumbled it because this is what happens whenever people try to like go off the path.
It would make more sense for Bill the writer to be writing that part. Like we even see, like we get to see his computer screen while he's writing, and it is a portion of the book in which I can't remember exactly what was on there, but he's talking about friendship and childhood.
Yeah, I almost I couldn't remember exactly, but I was like, wait a minute, is this the last chapter of it? The book? Is this some of the stuff that Bill is dreaming about at the end? And I wasn't sure because it wasn't on the screen for long enough.
I can't remember, but like he does say in that when Mike calls him that he just finished the first chapter, and all that was like definitely end of the book.
Yeah.
Like thematic, tying everything together stuff. But apparently in this book that Bill is writing, it's the first chapter.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I think it makes sense for Bill to write that section. I think it makes sense for Mike to write. Like, I think actually it makes the most sense for Mike to like be wrapping up his diary and to be coming to these great conclusions about this whole thing because he's experienced everything and the coming to fruition of all this stuff. It just doesn't make any sense going from Stan. It also makes suicide seem noble, which is never a good thing to do.
Yeah, rarely a good choice in fiction.
I
mean, no. See, Mike can't write it because Mike's a huge liar now.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So he can't be the moral center of things. Yeah, I don't know. I think they just needed a few more passes. I did. Speaking of Bill being a writer, I just have to say I did enjoy the recurring joke of people not liking his endings.
I enjoyed it the first time, and then they make the joke 6 times in the movie, and like to me, the culmination of the joke is Stephen King himself making the joke to Bill.
Yes,
and that's cut all of the rest of them. Like that's the joke. That's the joke right there. That's the function of the joke.
Yeah,
you've got Stephen King to be in your movie. He's gonna make a joke about how he hates Bill Denbrough's writing because the endings are terrible. Like you don't need 12 characters in the movie to all mention the same thing.
So right, because it just suggests
it's a good funny joke, but too much.
Yeah, because 1 or 2 people making the joke, you're like, 6 people making the joke, you're like, oh, his endings are just really bad, actually. This is universally held opinion that he doesn't know how to end a book.
And why is he a famous writer actually?
Yeah.
Because as we've said many times, this thing that people say about King and his endings, I do not believe is accurate at all.
But like I can defend this too, by the way. So like as they're trying to end the movie that he's part of shooting, which he can't come up with the ending. He can't come up with the ending they're asking him for. And it's like, well, what does this mean? He can't write things. He can't finish things because he doesn't have closure. He doesn't understand this consciously, but he doesn't have closure. He doesn't understand the meaning of the events he experienced in childhood because the story has not closed because they have not defeated Pennywise. Like I got all that even while watching the movie. So I was like, oh, okay. It's a joke. And also it makes sense that Bill would be bad at endings. Maybe they should have made it the joke one less time though. Sure.
Just a few less times. Yeah. I think the one other thing that we haven't talked about yet that I think is important to talk about before we wrap up is the change to the idea of memory at the end. um, in this story, they are not forgetting again. They are actually, like, we are told, like, I think they asked the question, why are we not forgetting again? And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, because I think Pennywise is dead.
Hmm.
Which is a big change from the book, right? I mean, this is something that we talked about, and that some people didn't like that the book did, and this movie they've taken that away.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they did it just to give people with more of a good feeling as they walk away, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, it feels more like the heroes running off into the sunset and a fairly unambiguous, uncomplicated success. Whereas if they lost their memories, you would feel this sort of complex melancholia, and you'd also be like, practically though, why are they losing their memories? Which is a question you have at the end of the book.
Hmm.
But I think the book is strong enough on the thematic side of things for you to be like, because it's about growing up and how you don't keep the memories of your childhood, but you do keep something of your childhood, and you don't necessarily know where it came from, but it matters still.
Yeah.
um, the book, the movie just didn't convey any of that, and so it would have felt like almost like our heroes were robbed. I think if they
I,
had just piled on like, oh yeah, and then they forget. um,
I agree. It just wouldn't have worked in the story they made. And so
yeah,
I think this is one of those situations where they wisely made a choice to change something or cut something, and
I think so.
I think it functions here. Yeah.
What does Stephen King think of this movie, or these movies, I should say?
The thing about Stephen King is that he is very good at playing the game.
Uh-huh.
And so you will very, very rarely get an honest opinion from him about what he thinks about these stuff. He
Uh-huh.
pretty much likes or has positive things to say about every single one of the adaptations. Like, he talked about how much he liked the Dark Tower movie. Do I think Stephen King really liked the Dark Tower movie? No, I do not think so. But
Uh-huh.
he's not going to say that. He's not going to say, like, make any kind of official formal statement on the record about what he thinks of these movies. So yeah, he liked him. He liked him.
Okay. Yeah. I see. I would actually guess that he probably mostly does like these movies, actually.
Hmm.
um, because I think they tried really hard, and and I think they tried to capture the story that he wanted to tell. And if they fell down here and there, it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah, I would guess that his feeling probably matches yours pretty closely, where he has some quibbles and largely agrees with me about all the things that I didn't like. But
Uh-huh.
I think he's a little less precious about his darlings than us, the fans, are.
Yeah. Right.
He's not gonna get bent out of shape about changes to Bev Marsh, a character he wrote 40 years ago and has moved on from.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think that's just true. So,
Yeah.
like,
Makes sense.
he's even said nice things about Kubrick's The Shining, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's not, like, still bent out of shape about the depiction of Jack Torrance. He doesn't care anymore, probably. So
Yeah. Yep. I think that's reasonable. I think it is also kind of funny that you and I basically kind of each just said that we're sure that Stephen King would agree with us. Um,
no, I said you. I didn't say he would agree with me.
oh, okay. Okay.
I think he would call me a stupid nerd, and to get
Oh,
over it,
okay.
I think he
Okay.
would largely agree with you.
Okay. Fine. I'll take that. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I do think it's kind of funny that we being like just everyone just sort of thinks like, well, surely the creator intends like my vision of the thing, right?
Well, sure, yeah,
I,
like,
I'm not being hard on us. It's just like I think that's kind of how you consume things.
the Stephen King that every one of us have invented in our heads
Uh-huh.
is at least 90% us.
Yes. Yes.
and
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. That's great.
Yeah. All right, so that is it, chapter 2. I thought, here at the very end of the episode, we could maybe just spend a few minutes for the last. This is it, right? Like, we are
Mhm.
moving on from Stephen King's It. We have spent the last 21 weeks here, and we're saying goodbye to it. So I just wondered, did you have any parting thoughts or thinking about, this book, this story, its lasting impact on you, on this project as a whole, this season that we're doing, or on the world? Any thoughts?
Um, I guess I'll just pick one of those and say like the amount of reflecting on my youth that I have done since starting this book is much more than usual. Um, and I think in a generally positive, cathartic, and growth oriented way, where much like the losers having their back and forth flashbacks as they struggle with supernatural evil,
Mm-hmm.
the book itself and other experiences I've had unrelated to the book, but viewed through the lens of the book, have caused me to um, reinterpret, reevaluate, etc. My younger years in a way that I just am not really prone to. Like I'm not really a person who dwells on the past
Mm-hmm.
generally. No more than average, I guess I would say. Something that I never do. So that would be the way in which it's influenced me personally. And I think continues to do so. Even after having finished the book a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
still kind of using it as almost a psychic tool to process my own life, which is I think what for me, like that's what great books do. That's what all
Sure.
my favorite books are, these things where they're quite literally psychoactive, where they get into my brain and they kind of change me and change how I see things, change how I think, change the meaning of my life for me. And I think this book has done that.
Sure.
So any parting thoughts from you on it?
Yeah. Well, just one more thing
Yeah.
before I do that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we ever said this on the show, but like one thing you experienced and talked to me about when we were reading The Stand was that by the time we got done with The Stand and the multiple adaptations of The Stand that we watched, you were kind of sick of The Stand. You were kind of like done with
Uh-huh.
these characters in the story and like ready to move on.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not like going to say, is this true with it? But my feeling was that I never really got that feeling from you while
N-
doing this whole thing, that like you're really okay, come on, let's go on with this. Do we really have to do all these adaptations, Scott? Come on. Like it just felt like you were more in tune with this story than that story.
Yeah.
Kind of from the beginning all the way to this very end right here.
Well, I'll just confirm that you're correct. I enjoyed the whole book and enjoyed both adaptations, even where we nitpicked here and there.
Hmm.
And like have come to a greater appreciation of the characters over time, rather than sort of being sick of them, as you I
Yeah.
think accurately described.
Which
Um,
isn't to say we didn't like The Stand, right? We both really enjoyed that book, but I do think this is the better novel, and I think that's one of the reasons why. Like, or at least that's a perfect demonstration of why, is that
yeah,
well,
it,
you
it
were
just
ready
lead
to move on.
this book just is a lot more. It's a lot better put together narratively. It just
Hmm.
is. Like the Stand is this shaggy monstrosity where just to this is what I say kind of every time, so I'm becoming repetitive. But like he had such problems with the narrative that he just had to have a bomb literally just blow up the plot so that he could move things forward. And from just a writer's perspective, it's just like that's just a gardener who is very, very stuck.
Hmm.
And that's a bad and so like then a lot of characters have more like somewhat anticlimactic endings in different ways. And I think and it just doesn't have any of those problems. It just
Yeah,
doesn't have like any of those problems.
and I'll say,
It's
like kind of repeating myself now from the very beginning of this whole thing, but I think one of the reasons for that is it is just kind of constructed perfectly to rein in King's gardening a little bit. It's like he's still a gardener, but like in this garden there were fences,
yeah. Yeah.
and like the structure of the book forces you to kind of look at and it, maybe not specifically plan ahead, but can be connecting dots constantly and bring things back to each other constantly. And it's just like it's like the perfect structure to take a gardener that tends to sprout some weeds in some places or grow in off of out of the garden in another place, like, and just kind of rein all that in to create this one thing that is yeah, I think structurally near perfect.
Yeah. I agree with all that.
Yeah, I think so. Unsurprised for me is that like it was an absolute joy. It was one of the joys of my life to get to share and talk about this book with you for the last, 4 months, whatever. It was such a wonderful experience. I think I said this in the first episode. I was kind of terrified going into this book. I was very uncertain on, am I going to feel as strongly about it? Is this gonna change? Is like, am I going to leave this thing not appreciating it as much or any of that? And it didn't happen. It never happens, but it didn't happen here either. I adore this book. I love this book. I just have a better way to describe to someone why this is my favorite book, or at least one of my favorite books of all time. It was absolute joy. And I agree with you. Leaving this book behind always makes me just sit and ponder my childhood and ponder growing up and ponder my life and everything that's kind of led to this moment right now.
Yeah.
And I get to do that every time I revisit this book. And so I'll get to do that if it's 5 years from now, if it's 10 years from now, I'll get to revisit this book and now officially be older than the losers when they came back to Derry, and getting to reflect on that time of my life, which is now. And it's one of those things that I think just rewards that reread.
Great. I'm glad to have been a part of it. And it was a joy for me as well.
Yeah. All right. So that is it. Literally.
Yeah.
So from here, next week, we are going to move away from the 1980s at last and move into the 1990s. And we'll have a lot to say about the 1990s next week as we move into our next book, which is Desperation. And we'll explain why I picked Desperation and our plan for how to tackle that book and tackle its companion book as well. But we'll save all that for next week. What I wanted to do here at the very end, on top of just being excited, is talk about that we're at this really cool crossroads, I think, in this season, Matt, because we've been going at this. We started the season at the beginning of January, so we're coming up on a year in season 3. And we've gone through the 70s, the 80s, short stories, and Richard Bachman. And moving into the 90s and beyond is like the time, I think, where in this project we're doing for this third season, my ability to choose what book we're going to cover and what that choice is going to do for the project really starts to appear. Because, if you look at the 70s, like, we haven't read The Shining. If we're doing like an example of King in the 70s, like, how can we not do The Shining? Like, we have to. We have to. There was no choice for me there. Obviously, it was The Shining. We go to the 80s, same thing. It has to be it. You can't not pick it there. You talk about Bachman. You talk about a little bit more choice there, but like The Long Walk is Bachman distilled and perfected. It's just one of the best book King has ever read. So I didn't feel like I had a choice there either. The second I said Bachman was going to be a category, I knew it was going to be The Long Walk. With short stories, a little bit more gray, but like, I think Night Shift is just a perfect example of King's short story potential. It just made sense to me. It was like an instant choice. Oh, Night Shift. It's going to be Night Shift. But then we move into the 90s, and I look at all these books in the 90s, and I go, oh, I have a real choice to make here, a real decision to make here. And the same thing happens in the 2000s. The same thing happens in the 2010s. And I think that's just going to be the way forward. And that's pretty exciting to me. Like, I loved these books we've done so far, but we're moving into books that, some people are going to be like, why did they pick that book? And I have a reason. I do have a reason for that. And we'll talk about those reasons. But I don't know. I'm just pretty jazzed about this whole thing.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about Desperation. I won't say any more than that. I'm excited.
I have so many things to say about this book. I have so many things, and they're all good things. Okay. Well, maybe not, but they're things. they're things for sure.
All right. Well,
so yeah, that is going to be next week. Next week, we will begin our new book, the 1990s, Desperation. We're reading the first 3 chapters of Desperation. It is, I think, the most number of pages we've ever read in a single week. It's 103 pages, or sorry, 107 pages. Sorry. That's a lot, but it's like, it's the only way I could make this work. Like, the way the book is broken up, it just, there was nothing I could do. So it's a long read, but that's okay. That's okay.
It happens.
Yeah. We will make it super short, the episode.
I'm excited to get back to reading stuff.
I know it's been a while. We've been almost a month of just watching stuff, so we got to get back to reading and talking about books.
The adaptations are a nice change of pace, but I do really enjoy our just kind of way that we do things, where we go through the text like this. So.
Me too.
All right,
me too. So that's next week. Next week, chapters 1 through 3 of part 1 of Stephen King's Desperation. It's gonna be fun. So get ready.
All right. Remember, you can reach us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com, on x.com at kingslingerspod, or you can answer. We don't have a discussion question.
No,
this
we
week,
don't.
But you can hang out with people over on the subreddit at r/doofmedia. There's always fun posts there. I'm delighted. I'm consistently delighted by the posts on the subreddit.
Me too. They're a lot of fun. Thank you to everyone holding it down in there and making me laugh, because it happens just about once a day. So, if you're not already subscribed to Kingslingers, this is a great time to do it. We're moving into the 90s Desperation. Oh, can't wait, Matt. And you folks can't wait either. You can find us basically wherever there are podcasts. You can subscribe to us, and you should do that.
That's right. And if you like any of our shows and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. We're a little bit late with our Patreon bonus content this month because I've been traveling, but we will have that out later this month.
Yeah, I think before the end of the month for sure. And we'll be talking about Pet Sematary, the original adaptation of Pet Sematary. And speaking of behind on things, the Do the King Thing writing prompt contest is over. We do have a winner. We haven't announced that officially yet, because we're going to do the thing we did last time, which is we're going to read those stories out loud and produce and release a special episode where we chat about those short stories for a little bit. And so we're waiting till we can get that together to do that. As Matt mentioned, he's been traveling, so our schedules have been kind of worse than they normally are, which is already pretty bad. So that episode is forthcoming. I'm gonna say before the end of 2023 we will get that out. But we had some people asking about that. So yes, contest is over. There is a winner. If you're on Patreon, you can check and see who the winner is right now. But we'll be formally announcing that and getting that bonus episode out hopefully pretty soon.
That's right.
But if you cannot support us on Patreon, that's okay. That's fine. We understand. There's tons of ways to help us out. You can share the podcast. Keep sharing the podcast. We know you guys share it. We can see you share it, and we do appreciate it. Keep doing it. You can also help us out by leaving a rating and a review. We are going to continue our trend, Matt, of going to Audible for our reviews, because we've got a lot there that I didn't realize, and we're catching up. So this week's Audible review comes from Joe G, who gives us 15 stars. I love saying that. I love saying 15 stars. So much more than 5.
Me too.
Joel says, a stroll along the path of the beam. My fiance is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I became jealous when she founded the Prancing Pony podcast. I wanted a similar experience with my favorite series, The Dark Tower, which thankfully led me to Scott and Matt. I listened through Matt's first trip along the path of the beam and absolutely loved hearing his reactions to my favorite characters and moments. I just finished reading Eyes of the Dragon and listen to their breakdowns along the way. Up next is The Stand, which I finally decided to read after always fearing the sheer size of the book. Can't wait to read and listen along with Matt and Scott. Hopefully someday I'll finally catch up and get to do the same with whatever book they are currently tackling. Thank you both for this excellent experience. Well, Joel wrote this review back in June, so I'm going to assume he's all caught up.
Probably.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah. Good to see you, Joel.
No, we really appreciate that. Being said alongside the Prancing Pony podcast is an honor. I love that podcast so much. I think those guys are great and 1,000 times more knowledgeable than I ever will be. So thank you so much, Joel. If you can hear this, if not, just know you just get you'll know in your heart.
Yeah, that's how this section of the podcast works. Yeah.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. As we said, we'll be back next week for the 1990s and Stephen King's Desperation. We'll see you then. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.